In this video, we're going to look at the 20th and 21st century global wars. Now, we have a lot to look at with this screencast, so be sure we are paying attention. First thing that we need to talk about is global interdependence. All global interdependence is just countries throughout the world depending on each other to get the things and the necessities that they need in order for their countries to survive. And this is a different mindset from before, where countries wanted to be independent from each other and be self-sufficient and support themselves. So like we see with imperialism, countries wanted to have their own sources of raw materials to ship back to their own country. Global interdependence is different. Now countries don't mind getting other things from other countries in order to help them prosper. So global interdependence is just a mutual dependence at a global or world level. Now, if you take a look at this next bullet, take it very slowly. It says one country depends on another country for something, and that country may depend on another country, and this will create global interdependence. For example, Great Britain might depend on the United States for tires and rubber, and then the United States may depend on Japan for certain types of technology. All right, so you see how one depends on another, and that creates interdependence. The importing and exporting of goods and services highly contributes to global interdependence. So world trade greatly contributes to this global interdependence. Certain commodities or certain products, like oil, have created a global interdependence between countries that produce the precious commodity and those that covet it or that need it or want it. So our example of being oil, different countries like in the Middle East, some South American countries, and the United States are able to produce oil. And oil is a highly sought after commodity throughout the world. Everybody needs oil. They use oil for their machines to run, and so that creates global interdependence between the countries that have it and produce it, or are able to produce it, and those that are not able to produce it and need it. Balance of power. In international relations, an equilibrium or a balance of power sufficient, equal, or big enough to discourage or prevent one nation or party from imposing its will on or interfering with the interests of others. So basically, we see a shift in the balance of power throughout time. So this is where we see the difference in, or the shifts between world powers. We can go all the way back to ancient civilization with this. Rome was the superpower of its time. Eventually they fall out of power. Over time, new countries, new kingdoms come into power. Same thing with the modern era. All right, we can say that we see the Great Britain being the world power at a time. And then after World War II, that shifts. And the United States then becomes the world power. Until World War I, Great Britain played the role of balancer in a number of shifting alliances within Europe. Then after World War II, a Northern Hemisphere balance of power put the United States and its allies against the Soviet Union and its satellites, or the places it went in and took over, in a balance of power that was backed by the threat of nuclear war. This is how we get the Cold War, which we'll talk about in a later video. China's defection from the Soviet camp, or basically China stopping their backing of the Soviet Union, to a non-aligned but covertly anti-Soviet stance, produced a third node of power. So now you got China in there. The Soviet Union's collapse in '91, the United States and its NATO allies were recognized universally as the world's paramount military power, and the balance of power is still shifting today. So basically, with balance of power, we see different countries coming in and being the most powerful periodically over time. Economic power. Economic power can be defined broadly as the capacity to influence other states through economic means. So it is composed of a country's industrial base, natural resources, capital, technology, geographic position, healthcare system, and education system. All of these contribute to a country's economic power. And these three things are going to play a role in the development and the duration of these 20th and 21st century global wars. First war we're going to look at is World War I. Took place between 1914 and 1918. Looking at our causes. Militarism. European nations engage in a massive military buildup in order to protect overseas colonies, coming directly from imperialism. Remember, back with imperialism, European countries have gone out, colonized pretty much the rest of the world, Africa, Asia, and now they need to have means of being able to protect these areas. And so they massively build up their militaries, known as militarism. Alliances, also coming from militarism, okay, and the need for countries protecting their imperialistic colonies. Okay, European countries form partnerships to protect themselves. Okay, we have the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance. All right, so now we have these European alliances to help protect, that were made just to protect European countries. So this is the way the European alliances were made up. So if you see in purple, you have the Triple Entente. In green, you have the Triple Alliance. Okay, and then you have some other key players as well. Triple Entente was made up of Russia, France, and Britain. Triple Alliance was made up of Italy, Germany, Austria, Hungary. And then we have the Ottoman Empire aligning itself with Germany as well. Nationalism. People feel loyalty and devotion to their country or culture. Okay, so again, coming back to having a strong sense of nationalism for their people and wanting their own country. This is going to play a role in why World War I begins. Imperialism. Rival empires seek to keep power. Okay, again, they see that by having the most colonies and the most resources, that means having power. And these European nations are going to do whatever it takes to keep that power. Finally, we have the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, who was shot on June 28th by the Serbian Gavrilo Princip. He shoots and kills the Austria-Hungarian Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife. And this sparks a chain reaction to the cause of the war. So if we go back a little bit to look at this political cartoon, it explains kind of what happened. Okay, we go back even farther, we can look at our alliances. Okay, so the Serbian, okay, shot the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Okay, Serbia was a part of Austria-Hungary. However, they wanted to combine all of their territories that were under that had their ethnic people together. They wanted to have their own country. Austria-Hungary would not grant this because it was made up of many different ethnic groups. If they allowed one to do it, then they would have to allow others to do it. So the Serbian Gavrilo Princip shoots Franz Ferdinand, okay, and so Austria-Hungary pretty much tells Serbia, look, you have to do this, and make some pretty steep accusations and things that are conditions on what Serbia had to do in order for them to be forgiven and make right. Serbia obviously did not agree to this, so Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Because that happens, okay, since Russia was in an alliance with Serbia, Russia declares war on Austria-Hungary. Okay, because that happens, okay, Germany declares war on Russia. France then declares war on Germany. Okay, Italy declares war, and then Britain declares war, and so on and so forth. Because of this alliance, or these alliances, we get World War I. And you can see here in this political cartoon, we have little Serbia, okay, Austria-Hungary declaring war, Russia declaring war on Austria-Hungary, Germany on Russia, France, and so on and so forth. Okay, it's just like a chain reaction getting into World War I. Looking at the effects. Economic costs. World War I cost the world's nations an estimated $337 billion. This is a newspaper ad showing that. Political changes. Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire were broken apart because they were on the losing end. Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Italy, they lose the war. Germany was greatly weakened. The Russian monarchy was overthrown during the Russian Revolution, which we'll look at as well in a later video. New countries and colonies formed in Europe and the Middle East, so the colonies of the losing side went to the winning side, and so they changed hands. So on the left we have Europe before World War I, and on the right we have Europe after World War I. So if you can see, you have Austria-Hungary here, Germany's right here, okay, and then if you take a look over here, okay, Austria-Hungary, Germany, Ottoman Empire was down here before World War I. If you take a look over here, they're a little bit different. Okay, so we have new countries. Austria-Hungary is broken up, so now you see Austria and Hungary, they're their own separate countries now. We have Czechoslovakia, okay, Romania gaining some land, Yugoslavia is new, okay, encompassing Serbia, so we see the political changes as well. We're going to look at World War II in this video as well, and we'll move on to the next video after this. World War II, 1939 to 1945. Now on your note sheet, you will see the common features of a totalitarian government. Okay, this is in your textbook on page 825. So when you get to class, okay, you can fill this chart in, or if you go to Coach Watson's website in the online textbook, you can get it from there as well if you want to go ahead and do that. You're going to copy the chart of common features of totalitarian governments in your notes. Now, the first thing that you'll see on your note sheet is World War II Crash Course History video. That will be on this playlist as well. Just go to it and watch the video. Guy talks pretty fast, so you'll have time to pause it as you see fit and answer the questions. We're going to look at the causes of World War II. Economic hardship and political unrest following World War I. Basically, Germany was required to pay war reparations that they were not going to be able to repay. And so, because of this, Germany and its allies were put in a very hard place economically and politically. So this is where we see aggressive leaders in Germany, Italy, even Japan coming together and wanting to expand their nations. Now Japan in World War I, they were on the winning side. But when the peace negotiations were being worked out, pretty much the European leaders didn't have anything to do with Japan. And so this rubbed Japan the wrong way, and so they pretty much put themselves against the Allies, and this is how one of the reasons as to why Japan comes into World War II as an adversary or an ally of Germany. Germany invades Poland and Japan attacks the United States. Those are the pretty much major causes of the war, or what starts the war. Germany invades Poland. Okay, this starts the war in Europe. The United States tries to stay out of the war as long as possible until Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. And you see here we have the causes of World War II. This political cartoon is showing the policy of appeasement or containment. Appeasement. Okay, so remember, one more lollipop and then you all go home. Basically, this is what the European nations were doing for Hitler, saying, here, you can do this, okay, but after this you go home. So this is where Hitler was going out and taking over different areas to try and unite German-speaking people throughout Europe. The European nations leaders, they did not want another war like World War I, so they told Hitler, basically, they tried to appease him, saying, all right, you did this, but then you stop. And as you can see, this is an actual political cartoon created by Dr. Seuss, who was a very adamant about making political cartoons during this time. The effects of World War II. Millions of people were killed, and large areas of Europe and Asia were damaged or destroyed. The Allies occupied Japan and parts of Europe, and the nations was created to help prevent future wars. It is still around today. Conflict began between the Soviet Union and other allies over the fate of Eastern Europe, Soviet Union being communist, okay, other allies being democratic and capitalist. And this is what leads to the United States and the Soviet Union emerging as the world's two major powers. Going back here, Soviet Union wanted a buffer zone. Okay, so Joseph Stalin said he had that agreement with Hitler saying that a non-aggression pact, then Hitler violated it, and so Stalin wanted a buffer zone. So he wanted to have control of Eastern European countries. Okay, that way, if somebody were to try and invade again, okay, he would have that buffer zone ready to repel that attack. And so eventually, the Soviet Union is granted that. And so that is what Eastern Europe becomes communist, Western Europe remains democratic. And because of this, it is known as an Iron Curtain descends upon Europe. Okay, so if you've already watched that video, you can see it. You have already heard that. But you can see here, all in red, these are communist areas. And you see that right down the middle of Europe, we have that divide. Democratic, communist. Kind of like an Iron Curtain. Nothing going in, nothing coming out. And here's a political cartoon. Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of Great Britain. Communist Soviet Union over here. No admittance. The Iron Curtain dividing Europe. In this next video, we will begin with the Cold War.